Graham Hunter, good morning to you. How are you?
That's grand, thanks.
I'll talk about the Clásico in a moment, but the thought did strike me that last week, geez, what a disaster it's going to be when we have to watch these teams play against each other week in, week out in this new bloated European Super League. It's a real disaster for us football fans.
That's a load of nonsense, an absolute load of nonsense. And if the game of football is being so explicitly driven by the mandarins in clubs, big clubs, who only think about their expenses and how it's hard to make the abacus tick over, then we're going down a bad track. And what's worse is that the format of this competition, I think, is glorious. It's been retouched, and I mean retouched rather than completely revamped, as you're talking about, over the years. And I'm older than you two, so as much as we venerate the European Cup, I say this time and again, if you grew up having to watch the European Cup, the number of matches right across the season where there was either a mismatch, the champions of Spain against the champions of Luxembourg, or there was fear and conservatism and outright defending. And the Champions League, in tandem with changes in sports science and changes in the ease of travel, has utterly changed how away football is played, for example. Instead of it being at all costs, don't concede, and any kind of draw, but preferably a 0-0 will do, all that kind of stuff. You see teams, and you have throughout your sporting lifetimes, both of you and all your listeners, seen teams playing away from home in a difficult ground as if they were playing at home. That's, if there was a greater a numerical way to express it than 180-degree change, then I would. And going forward by dumping this and going to the bloated competition, I hope that public opinion and sponsor opinion says that it can't happen, but at the moment it does look kind of inevitable. I'm kind of being devil's advocate here a little bit, just to kind of tease out what life might be like. What if European football actually is better for all of us? What if this actually, look, I mean, I understand that what we have now is really, really brilliant. But what if there's a chance of it being slightly better? I know loads of those mid-table English games end up being quite good, and they're very important for those local teams. But do we really need 20 teams in the Premier League? What if it's only 18 and actually we end up seeing more of Paris Saint-Germain and more of Barcelona and more? It's not because it's not about the brand names. You're preaching evangelism to Billy Graham here. I grew up, and I don't know why. I don't know why the appeal of RWD Molenbeek and Eintracht Frankfurt in the middle 70s for me at Pittodrie was at least as exciting as playing Partick Thistle or Dumbarton or Clyde. And from nothing to do with reporting and nothing to do with the Champions League, from the instant the team that I loved could pit itself against foreign teams, I was hooked. Even understanding the concept of it, but I'm in the minority, is my answer to you. Across my supporting career, across my reporting career, I have discovered that it is certainly in the cultures where I've lived, the cultures I know best. I can't state this for all of Europe, but it is essential that local rivalries, age-old rivalries, irrespective of national geography, as in north-south. I mean, for heaven's sake, one of the most successful pieces I ever wrote when I was in Fleet Street was a big old piece about how Leeds just used to kick lumps out of each other, and it was a Leeds visiting Chelsea that day, Leeds under George Graham, and it was a glorious slugfest and red cards and great goals. And somebody said that you were talking that, but we've got all these grudge matches, we've got all these local rivalries that I think are pretty true across Europe. And if you throw those, in theory, magical names as you did, this PSG and this Milan, they're brand names. What we want to see, I think, two things. One, we want to see a high quality of football, entertainment, and two, we want it to matter. So you can draw the brand names you want, but unless the games matter for what the points are, what the qualification gives you in a given competition, or because the fans watching TV, preferably in a stadium, are manically excited about it, then you're just it's a catwalk of names and a catwalk of strips, and I'm not I'm not. I'm not. I was going to say I'm not excited about it. I'm angry about them chipping away for the wrong reason at a Champions League format, which is absolutely brilliant and has literally given us some of the most glorious football matches that have ever taken place since the sport was invented. And if you throw that away, then you're doing so for the wrong reason.
Graham, just to go to El Clásico now for anyone who wasn't watching at the weekend, 2-1 to Real Madrid against Barcelona. A lot of talking points out of it, but I saw you were writing for ESPN after the match about teams winning or losing games of football before kickoff, and I think you referenced the great Celtic team of 1967 against Internazionale and avoiding them in the tunnel pre-kickoff. And you spoke about psychological intimidation and
not avoiding them. Hold on, Shane. Let's be clear about this. On the occasion of them becoming the first team, and this is hard for an Aberdeen fan to say, the first British team to ever win the European Cup, Shane, they got lost. The bus driver took them in the wrong direction from the stadium. That's what happened there. So they rushed in at the end because they were literally going the wrong way, and the players were saying to the coach driver, "Look, all the fans going that way. Do you not think that's a clue, fella?" And he turned around and just managed to get them there. And they rushed through their changing and stood in the... And this is from witness testimony. Players have told me that they stood and they looked to their left, and all the Inter Milan guys were brill creamed and smelling of cologne, and they were taller and they were handsomer and all that. And I think it was Jinky Johnson who just struck up the hill of the Seltzer. Here, I was at Bertie Auld. Might have been Bertie Auld, pardon me. And according to the Celtic players who were there, and I'm only bearing testimony to what they think, that affected Inter Milan as they looked and went, "Ooh, these lot look a bit pictish."
On that theme, what has the Barcelona players so psychologically intimidated before an El Clásico?
Now, what happened, Shane, was that for whatever reason, Barcelona's team got leaked to a Catalan radio station. It became apparent that Griezmann wasn't playing. If Griezmann wasn't playing, it wasn't three up front. They'd been playing 3-4-3 for weeks, often, and it was going to be 3-5-2. Zidane found out about this. He had a 3-5-2 formation about an hour and 10 minutes before kickoff, with Marcelo playing and Valverde. If you watch the game, Valverde, the hero of the first hour, more than an hour for Real Madrid, not playing. Zidane took a calculated gamble on reckoning that if there were only two forwards, one of which was Dembele, he didn't need to match Barcelona's formation. He ripped it up, and instead of 3-5-2 that he had planned to play up to 70 minutes before kickoff, he went for the formation that you saw, which was effectively 4-3-3. And he used Valverde in a role which was... Valverde didn't play as a wing back. He played both right back, right midfield, and high right, as if you're almost a winger. He did all these things until he ran himself into the ground. If you look at the impact that Valverde had in tying up with Lucas and giving superiority over Jordi Alba at left back, absolutely, it was defining reason for Real Madrid trampling all over Barcelona, and Barcelona for 45 minutes not having a clue, well, Koeman not having a clue what to do. And it turned the Clásico, because as much as Real Madrid deserved a victory, and they did, in my opinion, it ultimately ended up only 2-1 with Real Madrid 10 men and Elisha Moriba crashing a ball off the bar in the last second. So in some terms, you can say that the game was tight, but for 45, 50 minutes, it wasn't. It was threatening to be a slapping from Real Madrid to Barcelona.
Graham, in my opinion, Roadrunner is one of the most underrated cartoons of our time, and you managed to sneak in a beautiful quote in your ESPN piece. If this had been, you're talking about the Toni Kroos free kick, of course, and the absolutely abysmal wall that Barcelona constructed, but you said if this had been a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoon, there would have been a big Acme sign pointing to where the danger lay, saying, "Shoot here." Now, we've had a lot of advances in free kicks over the last few years, and, players lying down in the
Honestly, man, I need to pay you a fee. And it's pathetic to hear me laughing at my own humour. But you've made me laugh by telling me what I wrote the other day. That's very funny.
It was a great quote, though.
I think that's how you write match reports. There you go.
But how does that moment? Are you surprised? We've seen free kicks change over the last number of years, and walls change, and players lying down for a snooze to block the little cheeky kick underneath the wall. But how surprised were you to see in a game as big as an El Clásico, Barcelona construct a wall like that? It might seem like a minor thing to talk about, but it was huge in terms of the outcome of the game.
It won the game. I was appalled rather than surprised. So not surprised simply because I know that Ronald Koeman, like Cruyff before him when he was Ronald Koeman's coach, isn't a guy who pays attention to defensive set plays to the extent that Barcelona don't practice them. I quoted the Super Cup final where Griezmann, they concede, having been in a winning position, they concede from a free kick late on in the Super Cup final, Athletic going to lose it to that wonder goal. And what I began to investigate, and what happens is Koeman's tactic for defensive corners and free kicks is don't concede them, which is the advice Cruyff gave to his dream team. And they don't practice them. So they are, particularly when Piqué is absent, they struggle aerially. I didn't really expect them to be so bad at building a wall. But for anyone who didn't watch what you and I are describing, there was a four-man wall and then Dest about 2 meters separate from them. So when you see opposition players at a free kick, when the offensive free kick, burrowing into the wall, elbowing, stamping into us to try and get space in the wall, that's to create room for the guy who's going to shoot. Barcelona just gifted that space. There was a wide canyon of space. And my point was the wide canyon of space between a 20-year-old in his second ever Clásico Dest and a 21-year-old Mingueza starting his first ever Clásico. Now, behind them, Ter Stegen should have been organising and saying that wall needs to be tight, boys. But irrespective of the ball bouncing off Dest's back, because he turns around, another cardinal sin, there's a huge gap. And Kroos is a very good striker of the ball. Free kicks, never mind. You give the ball an open play to Kroos outside the box. It's a high percentage chance he's going to put it on target and test the goalkeeper and possibly score. So I really meant it was like a Wile E. Coyote, run here, please, Roadrunner. It was appalling. It was infantile. It cost them the game. I just thought that it was an embarrassment. And as you say, there has been, particularly in the Messi era, there have been all kinds of schemes worked out. 2 men on the posts, somebody starting in the wall, but then running back, presenting, just the goalie in the goal mouth to Messi predominantly, but then somebody peeling off the wall and running back. So there's 2 people there to confuse, take her, to put it into space where the guy's going to head off. All kinds of scientific work on how do we make it harder to score. Barcelona stand there in a Glasgow and go, yeah, listen, have a pop at that gap if you want, Blondie. And you go, it's a goal, is it? Yeah, how did that happen?
I mean, it's kind of bizarre given that Ronald Koeman was pretty good in taking advantage of those situations. You'd think he would actually be a little bit obsessed about stopping them, considering it was one of his own skill sets.
If Ronald Koeman had ever had a free kick in his life, it'd still be bizarre. I mean, you could literally take, a GAA coach from Waterford who'd never seen football before, and he or she would go, I'm not sure that's right, lads. Never mind.
Is it a peculiar form of Dutch arrogance? Is that what it is? It's like, oh, look, I mean, I was such a genius that I was able to do this, and only geniuses are going to be able to do it, and now there's no other geniuses on that pitch today, so don't worry about it, it's going to be grand.
We have to be careful how we tell these tales, because I have my hand up to being guilty to, the last ever interview that Cruyff gave, unfortunate for him, fortunate for me, it was me in Berlin, about a year and a half before he died. And no, less time than that. And I repeated the anecdote that the Dream Team have made famous, that when they said, boss, we're losing a lot of goals to corners, he just said, well, stop conceding corners then. Now, when you're Cruyff and you win the European Cup the first time for Barcelona, and you win back-to-back titles for Barca, and you become known as the Dream Team, that anecdote retrospectively seems piquant, seems funny, seems, only Cruyff. And now, having lost a Clásico, having lost a head-to-head record, potentially having lost the title, it's not over by any means, but it's been a serious blow, and victory would have been a massive fillip for Barcelona. It seems inept. It does seem childish. So all of us who report, who tell stories, I'm looking at me too. We have to be careful about how we use anecdotes to decorate somebody's so-called genius, because it's fine for Cruyff because he got away with it. Yeah. Less so for Koeman.
The winner's right history. Look, we had David Meyler on yesterday, and he gave a beautiful, brilliant. We were talking about, are you hopeful? Because he's a Liverpool fan, and he wears it on his sleeve. Are you hopeful again? Yeah, absolutely, I'm hopeful. What's the point in being a football fan if you're not hopeful that your team are going to be able to come back against Real Madrid? We've seen it happen before. And it was like, yeah, exactly. You're the whole point about being a sports fan is that sometimes you switch off your analytical brain and you just relax into the emotion of it, and you see where that carries you, and it can take you some amazing places. And that's why we fell in love with sport as kids. And yes, well, to puncture that and bring the analysis to it, it seems to me that we're seeing some kind of tactical crowning of Zidane. The Champions Leagues that he won up to this point, a lot of that had to do with the quality of the players, but there seems to be kind of coming through the difficulties that he's had. And it's been a difficult season, knocked out famously by a team of no marks in the Copa del Rey, to the point where he's made a lot of decisions recently that look like somebody who is coming to some kind of level of excellence, of a next evolution maybe of his ability to read games and judge the opposition in the same way that he was able to do as a player. Is that fair?
It's interesting, at least. I wouldn't outright dispute it, but I saw a lot of the phrases, the ideology that you just put forward coming out after the first leg of the Liverpool game. And I disputed them because people said, look at Zidane's tactics. He's beaten Liverpool 3-1. Look at how it happened. And my understanding of it was that Liverpool abandoned everything that's made them special over the Klopp era. You know, you play Liverpool when they're anywhere near average, their own average, never mind best. And they live in your throat. You know, they're on you. They don't let you breathe or think. I don't mean in terms of violence. It's just in terms of putting you under so much pressure decision-wise. Often you give the ball away. They take turnovers and use them brilliantly. And at the moment, now whether, I think I told you last week, I was speaking to Kevin De Bruyne, it was last week, and he said, don't worry, I asked him about the nick of all the players generally, not just City, elite players. He said, don't worry about us physically. We're fine, we're athletes. Mentally, it's costing all of us. And that's what it looked like last week, to my understanding. Madrid did the same as they've been capable of doing against any team who gives them space. And the way in which Liverpool allowed Toni Kroos to quarterback the match, particularly early on, there was a rejig at halftime, and they showed that they know where Toni Kroos' Achilles heel is. When Wijnaldum dropped into an area about 6 meters from Kroos, received the ball and looked at the German and thought, he's not running with me, off I go. And he scampered past Casemiro because Casemiro was exposed, and Jota beat Militao, and it was a goal. So they knew Kroos' weaknesses. So I can only presume they knew his strengths, and they just. But you know, in the first one, Kroos was on the right, and I guess it was Jota and whoever, and the second Jota and Wijnaldum. And in the next goal, he's on the left. And in that instance, Naby Keita is one of the victims of Kroos having fun with the ball. And then he gets whipped off. You know, it took, if you forget the goal celebrations and Thiago getting ready, I think it took about 2.5 minutes for Klopp to take Keita off after that second goal, going, look, I told you after the first one, you're my victim. He said afterwards, 3 or 4 players could have come off. Keita, I told you closing down, didn't, you're off on Thiago and in the referee's ear in German. They did last week's game constitute a massive change in appreciation for anybody who watches Zidane's football week in, week out. I'm not sure, Jared. I think your point is good in that probably he's been unfairly categorised as somebody who just turns out good players and they do the job for him. That was unfair. That was wrong. I think he's shrewd. Is he, you know, an absolute master tactician? I'm unsure about that. Is he a little bit like Ferguson? That's where I think the comparison is good. I think Zidane is a very good man manager. I think he's a very good understander of where his group is, what they can do, how to deploy his group at particular times of a season or over 2 seasons. Are they on top of the game? Who needs a rest? Who can play through the pain barrier if I just have a little Zizou word in his ear? These things he's very good at. And I think he's not a gambler, but I think if he sees a weakness, if he sniffs blood, that's where he's good. If you say a priori, you've got a really difficult rival in front of you and you're getting no help, no clues, and they're in good nick, then it's down to the quality of his players, in my opinion. You give him, you know, he's a wolf. You give him an edge anywhere, team information ahead of time, opposition that don't do their job, opposition that have lost a few players or injury suspension, then look out. And he he squeezes the juice out of his players. That's his great. He's a player whisperer.
I hadn't heard the Ferguson comparison before. It's really, really, really interesting. I was kind of putting the stuff that you were saying about the Barcelona thing and being able to take that information as a tactical thing, but actually when you frame it in the Ferguson terms, that's pretty interesting. All right, let me just briefly ask you about Paris Saint-Germain and where they are at the moment. Pochettino in the papers today saying, yeah, it's true, we have been better away from home than we have been at home. This game is not, by any stretch of the imagination, done and dusted at all. We know that. And that's, I think, the glory of games like tonight, where there's just this, like, what is going to happen here? Is one of the greatest young footballers in the history of the world going to be able to slay the champions of Europe in revenge? I don't know. So what do you think is going to happen?
I really want to see something that will be fascinating to me, which is how Pochettino makes his team manage the occasion. When Poch was at Spurs, I know somebody who spoke to Salihamidzic before Kovac was appointed and phoned him as an intermediary and said, listen, I can get you Pochettino. I recommend Pochettino. Make him your next appointment. And Salihamidzic, who obviously was a famous player for them, played in the 99 game against Manchester United and 300 or 400 times more. As football director, I went, yeah, we've been watching Poch. We've been watching him. What we don't like about him is in the midst of a game where we think we see changes that are important, Pochettino will often take 15 or 20 minutes to make that change. He's either slow, doesn't read it well, or he's worried about making big changes. That was what Bayern thought about Pochettino in about the season that he took them to the Champions League final at the Metropolitano, but clearly in the pre-season when they were thinking about making an appointment, and Kovac was the guy who ultimately got the job. Now, I think that transfers forward to this game because in the first match, it was playground football. And it happened to be that Bayern made more mistakes in front of goal. Paris Saint-Germain were better in front of goal. And you'd imagine that if they play playground football again in this tie, in this part of the tie, as they did last time, even with Lewandowski out, you'd imagine Bayern take more of the chances. And therefore, the away goal thing probably gets ruled out. And there is a threat. Everybody understands that Bayern have a more developed winner's mentality for a variety of reasons than PSG yet have. So this is where Poch's experience needs to come in. And I don't know yet. I suspect Marquinhos is out. And again, that's a massive problem for them. So it's about management of the occasion, management of the opponent, and managing how you deploy your forces against them. In my personal opinion, I tipped before the tie, I tipped my sponsors Paris Saint-Germain to go through and Mbappe to finish his tournament top scorer, irrespective of Haaland having had a 4-goal gap on him. Now that hasn't come true yet, but I stick to my prediction that I think Paris Saint-Germain probably narrowly win again tonight and go through. That's my opinion. But are they vulnerable to a power play by Bayern Munich, and would they possibly be going out if Lewandowski was fit? Yeah, that's true. To me, it smacks of being an absolutely unmissable tie with a little bit of bad blood thrown in, which is why this competition is great and why, just back to the beginning of your point, it shouldn't change. And we're running out of time, but next time I'm on, I want to know from both of you and your listeners, why is it in Ireland everybody calls the multiple of a euro? So the plural of euro is euro, 13,000 euro. Only in Ireland, and I want to know why. That's my terms.
What does everybody else do? What does everybody else say?
Euros, Jerry, euros. It's the plural, euros.
Ah, but we speak European. That's what it's like.
I want a better explanation. Do your homework. Be ready next time I'm on.
All right, okay. You all say euros, do you? You weirdos.
What do you mean? Have you never been outside Dublin? Of course, we all say euros.
All right.
And don't say weirdos. You should say weirdo, plural.
Weirdo. You all big weirdo, you. Ye.
Thank you.
Graham, great stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
See you, lads.
It's Graham Hunter posing all the existential questions that we just need an answer for this morning. If you've got an answer for that, you can drop it in the YouTube comments, or of course you can WhatsApp us. 0879 180 180 is the number. It's 15 minutes past 8 this morning. A reminder, of course, that OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead.